Good day, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the show. And today we are actually focusing on a conflict all over the world. Israel versus Palestine, Ukraine versus Russia, West versus East, and man versus the world. Actually, the world versus the man. But then, by world, I mean women. Because for most men in this day and age, women is the world, or lack of the women. And then what brings us to this conversation is the conflict. And I already see Glenn's reaction. He's looking at me. He's like, what are you talking about? Women's are not men's world. But it is, because a lot of men nowadays are kids and they're having mommy and daddy issues and they have abandonment conflicts. So all of those relationships that they have in present day with their current partners, actually, well, and it's not a psychologist show. This is the relationship show that we're here to discuss with two of my dearest friends who I look up to in so many ways. They mentor me on life, and the way you see me today is partially because of them. So without further ado, welcome Susan and welcome Glenn. How you guys doing?
Great. I'm so happy to be here. This is my favorite subject, man and women.
It's fantastic to have Susan Hum here today. She knows a lot about a woman's side of things. Obviously, she's a woman, but this is a woman who wants to start waking up women to the reality of what's really been going on. Feminism has gone a little bit too far. It has to swing back. This was all engineered, I believe, by the Matrix, the media machine, and the Muppets involved in that, plus the indoctrination system, used to be called an education system. The breaking up of the families, there's no proper guidance. A lot of women do not know how to be in touch with their feminine. And quite obviously, a lot of men do not know what it is to be in touch with their masculine.
So conflict, right? Technically, there are no bad conflicts if they are resolved, and especially in the family. We always like, well, if we conflict and we have the kids, watching this, they all always, watch the kids, parents argue, and it's going to impact later on in life. Well, the conflict could have a positive impact on the children if they observe the conflict being resolved and in a loving way, where man and wife can come to a conclusion, to a peaceful resolution without throwing lawyers in the mix.
I remember when Andrew was growing up. Andrew's my stepson. He's 23 now. And I remember my husband and I, we have very big debates on anything because he's very analytical, logical. I'm very heart feeling, nothing logical logic is not necessary.
That is the male-female dynamic.
Correct.
Yeah,
so
by nature.
Yes, I'm all irrational. I just go by love, and he needs to have everything structured, and you don't do something with no purpose. And so anyway, so we used to get into heated conversations, and Andrew was young, and he would be right in the middle of it. He's hypersensitive. So I remember I was in the school in grade 6, and I was talking to the social worker at the school, and I was just sharing with her some things that I'm a little bit concerned about. I was like, maybe I should just not say too much, or his father and I shouldn't say so much, because we get really heated, but then we're just coming to a mutual agreement of some sort. That's what and sometimes it takes some heat because it's passionate, right? If I believe in something, then I'm passionate about it. And sometimes it sounds like it's angry. But in the end of the day, what determines what's angry or not is your sensitivity and what's angry or not, right? So because he's a child, so you know what the social worker told me? And I'll keep this in my heart forever. She's like, don't stop speaking at home. Even if it's heated, the child has to be a little bit desensitized from that, because otherwise they get overly sensitive when they're growing up, number one. So they need to see how conflict is resolved. Right now, we live in a world where we sort of cushion everything for the children. So when they come out to the world, they don't even know how to be they don't know how to go into agreement, like making agreements with people. They don't know how to communicate or discuss things. They demand to be right, and they fight to be right. And that's what the world we live in today is people are fighting to be right. They're not trying to understand each other, if you know what I mean, Glenn.
Yeah, well, being right is not the solution, okay? And when you're arguing to try and find the solution, you always have to realize there are no solutions. There are only compromises. In other words, the solution is concessions so that both parties leave in a higher level of awareness, and they feel satisfied. That's the whole point of it. That's the way you're supposed to discern through things. And Suzanne, like you said, That is the problem today. People are overly sensitive. You have to watch everything you say because it might offend them, or they might get triggered. That's a nice word that they use today. Oh, that triggered me, or I had an emotional crisis. When somebody tells the G-man that, I can tell you, you're really telling the wrong guy, especially what's going on in the world today, where you have conflict around the world, where people have real problems, not perception of what is a real problem, but actual problem. You know, you have wars in Ukraine, you have a war now in the Middle East, hoping that's not going to get bigger and bigger and pull more countries in, which unfortunately, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist, and I think that's what's going to happen. But these are people who go through real hardship in life, not over dramatize the little things.
Well, this show, we talk about discernment all the time. And in this case, what we're talking about specifically is the relationship. And how do we discern who's right or wrong in this? And like Glenn says, there are compromises, right? It's not about right or wrong. That's not the solution. But I can comment on what Susan mentioned, that in my personal experience, I knew a 22, 23-year-old man, right? It's a man. Is 23 years old a man, Glenn?
That's a man.
That's a man, right? So I knew 23-year-old man. His mom told me that that I shouldn't talk loud around him or have any kind of conflict, because since childhood he wasn't well equipped to deal with arguments around him. And at 23 years old, he has a hard time still handling any kind of, not even his own conflicts, but conflicts that he observes outside of himself. So I think what we are observing now is not a problem on individual level, but it's a societal level. And here on the show, we always say there's a lack of man in the society, and man has been destroyed. However, that's why we brought Susan. Susan says women had their hand in this.
You're not wrong at all. One of the things is that it takes two to tango, right? The men have been emasculated because the women have been overpowered now. So at what point do we just sit back and take accountability and take responsibility for the parts we play in creating the world we live in? Right. And this is the thing. We do live, and whether you like this word or not, Glenn, we do live in a ping pong trigger world. And the ping pong trigger is that your sensitivities is a reflection of your level of low emotional intelligence. Okay. So your feelings are triggered. Now you have no handle on it, and then you react. At what point do we have to just suck it up as a human being because there's another individual around us, or there's other people around us, where we just step back away from ourselves and our trigger and say, hold on, is that trigger from my past, or is that trigger something that is now? It's usually things that are unresolved. So go and resolve your issues from the past. That's all there is to it, right? So yeah, we do. The women have been given, and I talk about this a lot, by the way. I talk about this a lot, is that the women feminist movement is a very new movement. It's not based on tradition. It's something that even in the last many decades is still new compared to how many centuries women and men have a certain role. But when you give women this much power, it's like giving a kindergarten child power without the emotional intelligence around it. They're going to wreak havoc in that kindergarten room because they're free. Now, this is the whole thing. This is the whole thing. It's like men are not equipped to deal with overpowering women. But men do want an empowered woman. There's a difference between being powerful and being empowered. What do you think, Glenn? Have you ever seen that distinction, or have you thought of that distinction?
Well, I'm going to go back to the original, that women have more power today and men have been emasculated. This didn't just materialize out of the blue. This was engineered. But I say men allowed themselves to be emasculated. You know, you do have a choice. Nobody puts a gun to your head and says, no, now you must be feminized. Okay, little sissy. But this is usually a result where things have been too easy for too long, and people have not enough real opposition to build up their willpower muscles. Okay. And going back to the original about how women feminism started, I believe it was a necessary thing because men who are at the top of the hierarchy and the dominance, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and they became corrupted in their position that nature bestowed upon them. So, they let's say they were fooling around on their wives. They would go out and drink, and they would be stressed out, come home and take physical abuse on their wives. And the women didn't have any way out of it, out of this conflict. They were stuck almost because they were treated like second-class citizens. Well, this was wrong. This was an abuse of power that was given to them by nature. So the women now had to fight back. And I was a proponent for that, except that was first wave feminism. Okay, I saw that in my own family. My mother's a very strong woman. My sister's a very strong woman. Second wave feminism, I was for some things, and then other things I say it could be starting to go a little bit too far. The pendulum is starting to swing a little bit past the happy medium. Now you have third wave feminism, which they're basically feminazis. These are consummate men haters.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, usually they haven't been blessed with the proper genetics when it comes to the looks department, or they just don't care about it. A lot of the third wave feminists you see now, they'll have blue hair. They look like they're really frustrated. They pent up energy and anxiety, and they're just popping at everything.
Is that like the neo-Nazis of genders?
Yeah, that's the pendulum has gone too far where there's not enough people that said, okay, no, you got to calm it down a little bit. This is too extreme. You're not going to push your cause anymore. You're going to cause a detriment to it, which of course now the pendulum has peaked and is starting to come back to the happy medium. And it will get that way a lot quicker here in the Western society because our way of life is being challenged now. I can tell you now, everybody, that things are going to get a lot harder economically. And that is going to create the need for getting together a little bit more socially, where instead of focusing on what divides you, you're going to focus on what unites you. The male and the female dynamic. They're going to have to find a way to fit back the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And you know what? You're right. Everything you say is right. Now, here's the thing. What is the new way? And this is the interesting thing, right? Because we can never go back to the old traditional way. Although sometimes I wish I would rather it be that way. But hey, without the abuse of power, right? The abuse of power. But so this is the thing, is that what is the new way? And because men have now adopted the feminine side of themselves. So the feminine side is the loving side, the receiving love and the giving love, and in a irrational, non-logical way. Because in the end of the day, the new woman today is very vocal, and the self-awareness is very high. So you can't unknow what you know now. So you have these women that are very aware and self-aware. Well, self-aware. Okay, aware. Self-awareness is a much higher level. So here's the thing. So how do we move forward? One of the things we have to do is to start listening to one another, not trying to control each other, not trying to judge each other as, if however you live, Glenn, I look at you like, well, I accept you the way you are. If it works for you, why not? Like, I'm not going to say, well, a man's supposed to, I don't know, have 10 wives, or a man's supposed to have one. I don't care. Whatever works for you, it is. But we live in a world where there's judgment. And if you come into a relationship with judgment, then you're going to it's not going to be working together. You're going to be working against each other. And that's what we're facing now. Because whether you like it or not, we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to be interrelated with other people, especially somebody to share our heart with. Isn't that what it is? I don't know. Well, you find the right person.
You said we are not meant to be alone. I heard something the other day that resonated, and I said, yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, according to real man mentality. men want to be alone, but they don't want to be by themselves. In other words, in their mind, they want to be left alone to find themselves or find the solution to their problems. That's the whole idea, and with a man finding his way the best he can for his family. Now, when you have an obtrusive woman in the mix, she's always pushing her way into the man's mind, then he has that inability to focus and concentrate and to find a proper solution to what would be better for him, her, and the family, and so on and so on. So this herein lies another problem. But what's going to happen is women by nature, when things get tougher, they're going to go back to their by nature, and they're going to look for that man who's more solid. Okay, the guy who's showing less drama, obviously, or is more stoic about what everything is going on. You know, the fear that's out there about potential war or losing your job or losing your home because now the interest rates are too high and the mortgage is too expensive, you know. So women during times of adversity will be looking for the rock, the type of man who's more solid. And this is why I tell the young guys today, don't chase women, chase excellence. Focus on being the top man that you could be, and then you're going to have a choice of women. When you chase women, you're putting them as the prize. They will like it in the beginning, but then they're going to say, I don't want this type of man. I want a man who knows how to lead himself. I want a man who knows how to take care of things, who knows how to fix things. He's physical. He's strong psychologically. He's very strong emotionally. And that he's still able to sit down and talk and come to a compromise. This is what a lot of women are going to be looking for. It's easy to say, I don't need a man. I'm a boss babe. I could take care of things myself. And it's easy to say that during easy times. That's when it's easy. But now we're going to learn about people's character during the rough times. So they're going to get exposed. And the real men are going to come up with higher affluence. They're going to look higher up in society. Like, that's the prize.
What I noticed both of you focused on is the actual, in your conversation, the conflict still sort of the underlining issue here right now in our society, in the Western society. And we are looking for the common ground to resolve this conflict, regardless of what that conflict is, but specifically between man and a woman. And you mentioned, right, self-awareness, identity. Right now we live in the world where people identify as chairs, pink flamingos or whatever else. Like, people don't really know who they are.
Nope.
In a sense, like we have a lot of confusion in the world in general. Now, here at the AlexSazShow, we accept your choices because it's the free will, and the free will is a primary rule for this universe created by God, or however you describe the higher power, etc. And that's if we accept each other choices, conscious choices anyway, then I think we'll find this common ground in a sense. But again, it stems like, well, what are we going back to? Or what is this new reality that we're creating? What if we don't need to recreate a bicycle? What if the traditional way of life always existed, where we all accept sort of our own identity in terms of creation, and we accept our roles in microdynamic like a family and the society as well. And that comes from actually understanding who you are. But nowadays, it's really hard to understand who you are because you've been talked at and told who you are, who you should be, and what other things you should be doing with yourself. And there is no common ground because everybody could do and, adhere to whatever group of interest they want to. And that lies the division. And the powers to be are very successful in throwing different things in the mix and dividing us constantly. And that's how I feel that the problem is, again, I actually agree inside with you, Glenn, here. if the man more stoic and strong and had a foundation, maybe they had we would have a better situation right now in terms of the equal playing field for women and men at the same time. Am I off?
No, that's right on. Yeah. Anyways, things are going to revert back to its natural hierarchy. I won't say it's a hierarchy. You know, some of the men channels, they say that women should be, nice looking, soft, submissive. Just that word alone, submissive. Personally, I don't even like that.
It means controllable.
Yeah, I would prefer to say easier to get along with.
Easy
That's
going.
all. They're more chill. That would be a driving thing. But no, the Matrix is controlling people's perception of how to be, and so they don't work on themselves, and they don't take the blame for anything bad that happens to them. They take all the credit for the good stuff that happens to them. But for the bad stuff that happens to them, it's somebody else's fault or somebody, it's never their own. They don't take accountability for it. Herein lies the weakness. If you want to fix the world, everybody, you fix yourself first. Okay? You got to go inward.
Yep.
You got to face the things that you don't like. At least be honest with yourself. Have a nice conversation in the mirror. That'll be the best conversation you could ever have. And be honest. And you're going to learn something about yourself that was subconsciously you were trying to suppress for a long time. And this is what weakens you. And there's a lot of people in the psychoanalyst, the psychiatrist field who do everything they can but help you.
Yep.
They say, oh, it's not your fault, or, it's because of your upbringing, or it's your past, or you're worried about the future and we have a pill for that because you have anxiety. No, I am what I am and that I am. Yesterday I was, tomorrow I will be, but right now is the most important. So you have to focus on the now. Fix yourself first. If everybody did that, the whole world would find a way of fixing itself.
Yeah, there wouldn't be any conflict. In the end of the day, conflict is created by internal conflict first, right? So in terms of the relationship type of conflict, usually it's when one or both the individuals have internal conflict. For women, the internal conflict, the modern day internal conflict, is when our hearts are battling with our heads, or vice versa. When women are too much in their head, that's when there's, because as women, we're supposed to operate in our heart. How do men, like in terms of the best relationships you see out there, let's say Michelle and Obama, right? That they're the classic example of that couple. And she's a lawyer, right? But she has stepped down.
She might be a he.
Whatever. Whatever.
It's gonna come out.
That's okay. I'll wait for that day. But
People
for now,
are going to be surprised.
For now, I will just, accept that. But you know what? There's a very feminine side to her as well in her outlook and tradition, whether that's whatever the belief is. But here's the thing, though. As any great man, I'll always believe this saying: every great man, there is a greater woman behind him. Okay, or hey, let's not look at the homosexual.
I would say with him.
Yeah,
Because behind means, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But we don't want to trigger people because you have to watch everything you say. So I would say with him.
Okay. Hey, if
empowering him even more.
If we're gonna be really pedantic on words, because I'm not driven by it, I changed the whole concept of dictionary out there now, because the dictionary and meanings of words have been so minced by sensitivities that whatever, if you guys want to stay with your sensitivities, beside, I've always said, and this is how I live my life, and no one can dictate to me how I say my words. I could say it for other people that we can be diplomatic, but I've always said I will always walk a step behind my husband. If I want a man, I want a man. He doesn't treat me like I'm a dog. He doesn't treat me like I'm second class.
No, you wouldn't put up with that.
No,
because
but
you know your own self-worth and your own self-value.
exactly. But how do I want to empower him? Because that's what I'm there for. He empowers me by giving me what I need. How do I give him back? And this is the whole thing. If I didn't have that certainty or that clarity within me and my role that I choose. So if somebody says to me, well, Susan, you shouldn't say you walk behind him. Why shouldn't I? It's worked for me.
Works for you.
You're going to tell me
you're
it's
not a
not
narcissist.
No, I don't care. Okay, fine. I'll walk beside him. Okay, let me just step up a few steps. I don't care. All I do know is that I am here to make him look good as much as he is here to make sure that I'm safe. We live in a world where no one feels safe. The man doesn't feel safe with the woman. The woman doesn't. Isn't in the end of the day, and I say this to all women out there, isn't the end of the day the most important thing is you find somebody you feel safe with, regardless of how they look or how you can find the richest man and the most gorgeous man, eye candy, and he doesn't make you feel safe. What is going to be the criterion in which you choose that person? It's all about what makes you feel safe. And if you don't feel safe in your own system, like you said, Glenn, fix yourself, fix whatever conflict you have, you're never going to be safe anywhere.
This is exactly what I was saying in the Western culture when things starting to get more difficult. Okay, what do you feel? You feel safe with your husband. This guy's strong. Actually, Alex, we should have him on the show too one day. He's a lawyer, isn't he?
He is.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what he.
I've had to find a way to tap into his heart, though, because I can't battle him in the brain, right? Because he uses what I call intellectual bullying. Well, I didn't read as many books as he did, so he could I had to find my way to be able to help to go into the rational way, but from the heart. When you're able to turn emotional things logical, that's a woman's superpower. Mm-hmm. You don't reject your heart. You don't reject your feelings, because men count on us to help you feel safe to feel, because you're not born with that unless you had a really good relationship with your mother. And the son and mother relationship is what makes that boy feel safe in their heart. But in society nowadays, we don't have mothers that are even strong enough to give that manhood to their boys from a loving place. The father is there to give them the strength to tap into this. But the woman, the mother, is supposed to help the boy feel safe in their heart. So I usually know what relationships they've had with their parents individually based on how comfortable you are with matters of the heart.
I'm going to say the least popular thing here on the show. Well, maybe you guys like it. The accepting the role, like Susan, you're talking about walking step behind or walking next to a man, etc. How are you? We had this thing traditionally for a long time. Women's first, right? You open the door, you let them sit down. You don't send women and children to the war. The man goes. And men are so strong, and the women are so strong, and the leaders in our society, and we can see them as CEOs, and they're walking step to step, and sometimes ahead of the men. What happens when the conflict arises, the actual physical conflict arises? Who resolves the conflict?
Both.
No,
This is
he's talking.
physical.
about physical,
Oh, you're
yeah.
talking about physical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, you
so
were saying
it's always
it by
the men.
You were saying about feeling safe.
Yes.
Obviously, well, that's one of the things.
Correct.
You're with somebody who's not going to allow somebody else with a nefarious thing on their mind to do what they want to you. He won't allow that. You'll feel protected with him.
Or if it's a single woman or a single mom, whatever, if she finds herself to be by herself in any situation, what does she do? She calls the help, police, who's predominantly men.
Used to be, yeah.
Used to be, anyway.
Yeah.
But there was a time where men kept men in check. Okay?
Yeah. There was
Like-
more of manhood.
Yeah, they're
a
like,
community.
no, hey, brother, yeah, you're not supposed to do that to the woman there. You were going to relax yourself or you're going to get it, okay? That's men used to take care of men, but then the government got involved. Oh, you can't allow that. You can't do that. Oh, no, that's
Well-
what, vigilantism?
Yeah, I also think women used to keep other women in check. And two, and it's like, what are you doing? You being a whore. Like you have a man, you have a husband, you have kids, take care of yourself. Women used to be a support system for other women as well, but it's like, oh no, go get it, girl, go out there and do your thing, chase your career.
And how's that working out, ladies?
Not very well. We live in a world where, and you bring up a really important subject here, because what happens is we are enabling and supporting bad behavior because of this sisterhood, or it's almost like we're living in a society, and this is not whether it's good or bad. It just is, right? When something is, it just is. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I know why it doesn't work though. But here's the thing: is that just because another woman is suffering, I got it. But we cannot enable bad behavior though. But when women get together, all of a sudden, every right thing gets pushed down to the lowest common denominator, which means the most sensitive person is running the show. Because God forbid we say anything to that sensitive person that might offend them. So we all the standards have now been taken down to the lowest common denominator, which is the highest sensitivity. And that's a dangerous world to live in, because then you're not having anybody empower each other. If a friend of mine did something wrong based on their reaction to something, let's say, for example, I did have a friend a few years ago. Some of the things she did to her soon-to-be ex-husband, it was appalling. And as close as I was with her, I had to tell her that is not right. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, you go for it, destroy that man. I know why he cheated on her. I would have cheated on her. I mean, this is terrible, but it is what it is, right? So we do have not every case is, we cannot generalize that every divorce is because the man is bad. I have a friend who's a lawyer in the US. She does family law, and she works on mediation divorce. She told me straight up, she says, Susan, the truth is the higher percentage of the women who are claiming that their husbands, soon to be ex-husbands, are narcissists, it's actually them. She confirms it. She works in family law. So let's just step back and enable each other to empower through our life and not support bad behavior. I get it. You have to react like that. I hear you. I can imagine I might do that too. But at what point do you say, you know what? Then how do I react, or how do I start learning how to respond? Because responding is the empowered strategy. Reaction is a very emotionally weak. And when I say weak, it's not a judgment. It just is what it is. Isn't it a measure of where you need to, so many people are scared to be honest with themselves. So many people are fearful of truth. And that's where it becomes scary. I'm always like, please call me out. Please tell me I'm wrong. Call me out.
Well, what you're saying is true, because I think why we support other people's bad behaviors to justify our own.
Yes.
Well, it's as simple as that. For me, anyway, that's how I see it. And what do they call them? The support system for those group, the circus or flying monkeys, or whatever the narcissistic term is. So, like, in narcissist, by the way, it's not a person who is empowered. It's the person who's hurt. It's the person that's in survival mode for whatever reason. It's usually from some kind of childhood trauma. Mm-hmm. And their brain has been so compartmentalized that they build this illusion around themselves. And now we have this whole support system from not just flying monkeys, but we have all of this social media, right? They also, like, I scroll through social media because we're on social media with this show, and I would tell you like 50% of all the posts, it's women in bikinis or sexy dresses, and now a lot of them are like of age, looking for a man, traditional man, or whatever they're looking for. And you can see on the likes, like, I mean, I'm not complaining here, but it takes that little for a woman to get likes on the social media just to put a bikini on, or sexy dress, or do some kind of sexy fun dance or whatever they do, and everybody clicking like for whatever reason. I don't know why. I mean, I usually just scroll through this thing without even give it a thought. But the whole society right now enables this kind of behavior.
Simps. Man-child, a man who hasn't grown up yet. That's his whole point of his life, is to look at half-naked pictures of women and give her likes. That's what you're doing with your free time? In this world that's going to be getting much more difficult here in the West, as a man, that's what you choose to do with your free time? Good luck. You're going to be left behind. Okay?
Yeah, I agree, and I think we're already kind of experiencing that where you do find. I mean, we do know that there's like you mentioned that there's an enormous rate of divorces for the women, especially if what are the criteria? Educated women. So by educated meaning indoctrinated.
The higher the education level,
Yeah.
the higher the potential for divorce.
Yeah.
80% of the divorce rate, which is a little over 50% now, for the younger marriages, it's more like 70%. But of the people who want a divorce, 80% are initiated by the women.
And
92% of all alimony is paid by men.
And also, there's another statistic, which I mean, it's hard to confirm because which woman is going to admit, but they've done surveys where it's more likely if the woman had 10 or more sex partners before marriage that there's
90% failure rate in marriage.
90% failure
Yeah,
rate.
10 or more will indicate, on average,
Really?
90% of more failure rate towards a long marriage.
Oh, I better try harder then to make sure I don't get divorced.
But this is not a woman bashing channel. I'm telling you, I'm more towards bashing the way the men
Yeah.
became.
Well, here's the thing. We were
That's
talking
how
about,
you're going to wake up the men, and then women will naturally be happier again. It's obviously the women are not happy right now. They're venting. Why? You go to the gym, you ask, you talk to the women, they say, oh, you can't find real good men around anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Here's the thing. It starts by, well, first of all, conflict, the whole concept of conflict is based on anger. I mean, right? I mean, conflict is anger. But if we don't have internal anger, we would be able to deal with conflict. So anybody who can't deal with conflict has internal anger or resentment. That's just the way it is, right? I mean, so anybody who's always conflictual or always trying to find ways to be argumentative in a way that they need to win, the first thing I look at is, well, you have some anger issues
They're
that
venting.
are suppressed. Yeah.
Venting. That's
Yeah.
their escape.
Because it's emotional fuel, right? Like they have to let out. So rather than, and people that need to be right, it usually comes from a life where they were bullied. But here's the thing. If you don't want conflict, then work on your internal anger or there's some kind of resentment. But like you said, I mean, in the end of the day, it's not whether it's the men's fault or women's fault. I think that this is a conversation that's so important because my passion lies around children. And it's time for mothers to learn how to be mothers to boys and to all children. But in the end of the day, we have to be okay as mothers before our children grow up to be okay people. And it starts from there, doesn't it? I mean, all the problems we face as adults, we can look back and see why we became this way.
Alex, it would be a great idea to have Susan back often on the show. Put her on the G-Man show. It's going to be a motivation and mentorship for the modern man. And to give a woman's perspective, a woman's point of view, somebody who really knows what's going on, the dynamics today, the modern day dynamics of the relationship. And unfortunately, Suzanne has to go. Susan's got to go to another podcast because she's so hot. She's all over the place right now. So we'll be looking forward to having you back ASAP and really run with this.
Also, brothers and sisters, please write us with your conflicts, your personal conflicts, obviously anonymously. We will not mention your names on the show. But if you have a conflict or you have a story that you want us to address and put our 2 cents in it as men and women of traditional values or the way, the old new way of looking at things, trying to restore actually order and identity crisis situation that we have right now in the world, please write us with your stories. We'll read it out loud. We will not mention your name, and then we'll discuss it here on the show. And maybe you would like our side of things, and maybe even like our solution recommendation. So, brothers and sisters, thank you again for tuning in to AlexSazShow. Susan, thank you so much for coming, and we're definitely going to see you as often as we can on our program, specifically resolving conflicts between men and women of this world, and you will join us on our roundtables as well. Glenn, thank you for your manly input as usual, and brothers and sisters, we're very happy to have you here with us every time you tune in, and we'll see you on the next one. Glenn, we make a community worse for everyone.